Good morning, good morning. All right, let's continue on. We've got more of the white horse prophecy. This is prophecy key to the future. This is getting right near the end of the book, but this is really interesting. I've never heard or understood about this, what this was all about. So far, they're talking about how the church is going to be driven to the Rocky Mountains. They'll have different prophecies, or sorry, not different prophecies, but different persecutions come after them, especially through politicians and the laws that they have, and that you'll see the Constitution hang by a thread again. I don't know if he was throwing that in there, but then he switched over to the kind of analogy between a white horse and so far a red horse. The white horse is the church with peace and prosperity, whereas the red horse, the author is thinking that is likely to be Native Americans, but I posit the idea that instead of just Native Americans, it's people from Central and South America. And then the white horse will raise an ensign to the top of the mountains for peace and safety. Now, the mountains will be full of minerals, which it is. We've got lots of oil and minerals and such. And they'll become very rich, but people won't care. Gold will be of little value and capacity when everyone else will have to do in seeking salvation. He quoted the idea that, if you had a bar of gold and a cat, that the guy would take the cat. I sit there and think that, look, with what we're in, the church is extremely prosperous right now, which is great. At the same time, the saints here in the Rocky Mountains are also quite prosperous, for better or worse, and I went off on a tangent on that. And then I was expressing the idea that in the economy that's starting to unfold, I think people have better things to do where they would want to actually have a job or things to do. And so it's not just about, feeding the belly, but who knows? And the time will come that when the banks in every nation will fail, and the only two places that will be safe where they can deposit their golden treasures, it'll be the white horse, meaning the church in its peace and safety, and England's vaults. At this point, I don't even think England's vaults. I think that was a holdover from the time that they were at that time, because they were known as like the bankers of the world. Now, I don't know. Maybe not. I doubt it. So, to me, I'm also sitting here going, most of this seems like it's fulfilled, frankly, at this point. So, remember, this is being related by a man several years after the fact that it happened. It's recorded by Edwin Rushton and Theodore Turley. And for some reason it was put here at the back because I guess there's certain controversy about it, or trying to figure out how it's supposed to work, and there's lots of commentary from the author about how each part has been sustained. So let's keep going. A terrible revolution will take place in the land of America, such as has never been seen before, for the land will be literally left without a supreme government, and every specimen of wickedness will run rampant. That I could see through mobocracy, through overthrow. Orson Pratt. God has sent forth his warning message in the midst of the nation, but they have rejected it and treated his servants with contempt. The Lord has gathered out his people from their midst and planted them here in these mountains, and he will speedily fulfill the prophecy in relation to the overthrow of this nation and their destruction. We shall be obliged to have a government to preserve ourselves in unity and power, for they, though being wasted away, will not have power to govern. For state will be divided against state, city against city, town against town. The whole country will be in terror and confusion. The mobocracy will prevail, and There will be no security through the great republic for the lives and property of the people. And that was quoted earlier as well. The next section of the prophecy says, father will be against son, son will against father, mother against daughter, daughter against their mother. The most terrible scenes of murder and bloodshed and rapine that have ever been looked upon will take place. And rapine is just all sorts of villainy, not just what it sounds like. Support for that, Jedediah M. Grant. 3 days before the prophet Joseph Smith started for Carthage. Wow. Sorry. I well remember him telling us that we should see a fulfillment of the words of Jesus upon the earth, where he says, the father shall be against son, and the son against the father, the mother against the daughter, and the daughter against the mother, and the mother-in-law against the daughter-in-law, and the daughter-in-law against the mother-in-law. And one man's enemies shall be those of his own household. The prophet stood in his own house when he told several of us of the night the visions of heavens were opened to him, in which he saw the American continent drenched in blood, and he saw nation rising against nation, and he also saw the father shed the blood of the son, and the son of the blood of the father, and the mother put to death the daughter, and the daughter the mother. The natural affection forsook the hearts of the wicked, for he saw that the Spirit of God should be withdrawn from the inhabitants of the earth, in consequence of which there should be blood upon the face of the whole earth, except among the people of the Most High. The prophet gazed upon the scene, his vision presented until his heart sickened, and he besought the Lord to close it up again. For other quotations pertinent to the topic, see chapter 4. So again, he kind of used that, which makes me wonder if he was just kind of, anyway, focusing on this and came out with the book. Anyway, next part of the prophecy says, peace will be taken from the earth, and there will be no peace, only in the Rocky Mountains. Support for that, Brigham Young. We are blessed in these mountains. This is the best place on earth for the Latter-day Saints. Search for history of all nations and every geographical position on the face of the earth. You cannot find another situation so well adapted for the saints as are these mountains. Here is the place in which the Lord designed to hide his people. It has been designed for many generations to hide up the saints in the last days, until the indignation of the Almighty be over. His wrath will be poured out upon the nations of the earth. For other quotations pertinent to this topic, see chapter 4. I would think that, in a modern sense, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the prophecy through the eyes of the people who said it and received it. So, in the eyes of Joseph Smith, he gets a lot of things right that would be impossible to get right in a lot of different ways. So I don't know. I don't know if there's any part of this that's influenced by his time frame. I think the vaults of London is one, but because I just don't see how they're secure. Banking system is all set together. I think if things, and that's the thing, is if things shake out as deep and dire as the book makes it out to be, then I think it's going to require a lot of ingenuity from the saints in the Rocky Mountains, both north and south, to keep things going like a civilization should. To be energy independent, to cast off the outer shell of those who would fight against us. I mean, I just sit here and think, okay, if we had access to our own energy and resources and minerals, right? Do we have foundries to make them? I don't know. What about our oil that we have? We need someone to be able to not only get it and retrieve it and then take it to the spot, but be able to be defending against it in case it's needed. Yet at the same time, getting over the mountains to Utah, it's pretty arduous, depending on how If you are out of fuel and you have to walk here, you just want to get through the deserts. You don't want to stop and do anything other than get to where there is some sort of civilization. I don't know. There's all sorts of stuff about this that I'm just like, there's a lot of details you could consider, think of, worry about. To me, when I sit here and think of this, I think the most important thing is for each and every individual member to be as self-sufficient as possible. Dude, they're exploring. I've got packages, well, not packages, just snorkel stuff out, and they're sniffing all around it and knocking over my camera. But I think every person would need to be as self-sufficient as possible, meaning that they'd be able to support themselves as much as possible in times of need and in times of collapse, followed by which we as a people would need to be ingenuitive enough to sit there and say, okay, who has been out to the oil fields? Who can retrieve the oil from those fields? And who can bring it back, and who will keep them safe to do so? Who knows how to take care of the power, and who knows how to keep care of the etc. and keep things going, even if other things collapse. Or banking, because I do not see any bank, big or small, surviving if there's a true banking collapse. Just how? Now, the problem is I'm assuming a whole bunch of stuff in this worldview. Like, I'm assuming this all kind of happens at once, because you very well could have a rolling tragedy of things, right? Things like, oh, the banking system fails. That's the first thing. So all the banks fail. Nobody wants to trust them, except here in the Rocky Mountains, because, I don't know, maybe we have certain credit unions and small banks that still decide to operate despite everything else that's happening. And because they have conservative ways of doing things, they'll continue despite what has happened. So that could be something, followed by which then you have a crisis on all fronts of people becoming more mobocratic and not being governable. When the Spirit of God withdraws, even if there is some form of government, either it just becomes nothing and everyone is starting to loot and riot and mob. And we're already seeing that in the world. Like, even during this week, Cuba has lost all power. The people are burning the old communist strongholds. Don't know how that's going to exactly help. And they're reaching out to the U.S. to finally be done with the issues that they have. Yeah, so it's just, you can see, and in other different parts of the world, there's uprisings and things like that. And so to sit there and think that the people of the United States would not do that, I think is a sham, because we've already seen it happen, despite the coverage of the media on it, especially in places where it was just ideologically based, that they destroyed government buildings, they destroyed neighborhoods and buildings there, and took over certain city sections. And so, yeah, to say that doesn't happen here is foolhardy. And yeah, so I sit there and think that, okay, you can have that, and depending on how bad it gets, why would people fight against each other? Well, you could say it's over ideology. I would hope more than anything that here's the reason why. I would hope that it stays fighting among ideological lines, because then it means you have a group of people that you can stick to, that you find that you would like to help preserve or can help preserve you. The reason I say that, even though that itself is atrocious, like horrifically atrocious, is because there are things that are worse, where everyone is against each other for pure survival. That we turn to the horrors and atrocities of turning on each other to survive, just for water, just for food, just for whatever else. In a society like ours, where we have been so far removed from the most basic way of accomplishing tasks that help us to survive. How many people even know how to cook? How many people even know how to plant a garden and to use the produce from that garden? Like, I am not a green thumb, unfortunately. I'm grateful to have bought a home that had mature fruit trees, and one of those fruit trees I've had has not made it. This is how bad I am. I'm trying to do my best. I'm not doing well. I can do other things like peppers. I've done peppers well. Wow. There's a lot I don't know about gardening. I can do some, but I'm not great. And nor do I have the time to work on it well enough, unless everything goes to pot. And I think there's a lot more who have a lot worse than me. Other skills I do have, being able to live off grid. That's skills I'm sure a lot of people don't have. How many people understand how to do their own laundry if they had no washing machine? I doubt many people do at all. Or they don't even have anything to do that with. Because the idea, at worst, you could have a bucket laundry machine, where basically you take a plunger and you make a hole in the lid, and you just put your laundry in that bucket and you squish, 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 squish. It's a very rudimentary way of doing it, but it works. And some people don't have that. Some people don't know that. And the question is then, okay, after you wash it that way, if you want to get out stains, there's the washboard. How do they use a washboard? There's a lot of people that have no clue. And then how do you wring it out? How do you dry it? How many people know how to dry clothes on a line? Or even make clips to help the clothes be hung instead of just folded over the line, which is less efficient. How about in the winter? I grew up in this weird way where I lived in modern times. I grew up with computers becoming great, and yet I had one foot in the past because of my family and church history that was taught to me. The culture that my mom, my dad, my cousins, my uncles, my aunts kind of passed down in little bits and little stories. And it wasn't something like a complete cultural heritage. Plus, we had the Boy Scouts growing up. So there's a lot that I got. So when I sit here and think of all these tragedies being prophesied about, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, but, I keep assuming that they kind of all happen at once, because if you have a collapse of this, then it tends to be a collapse of that. But I keep forgetting that it doesn't mean that it all happens at once. That it's a slow rolling tragedy of maybe this fails, then that fails, then this government fails, then those protections fail, then there's no real police, then it really is mobocracy, and then people will try and only find places of peace. And that's up here, that kind of stuff. Anyways, let's continue with the actual prophecy instead of my conjectures. Peace will be taken from the earth. Oh yeah, father and son and murdering, and Jedediah and Grant talked about that. The prophet in his own house, when he told several of us that, so Jedediah and Grant said that when Joseph was going to Carthage, he saw a fulfillment of the father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, mother-in-law, etc. The prophet stood in his own house when he told several of us the night visions were opened to him, bathed in blood. I read that. For other quotations pertinent to this topic, see chapter 4. All right, peace will be taken from the earth, and there will be no peace, only in the Rocky Mountains. Brigham Young, we are blessed in these mountains. This is the best place on the earth for the Latter-day Saints. Search for the history of the nations? Oh, yes. It'll be adapted to the, well, okay, it has been designed for many generations to hide up the saints in the last days. Oh, yeah, and that got me to thinking about people fleeing here. If things like gasoline become scarce or non-existent to the common man, then people are extremely limited, and then yes, the natural barriers of the Rocky Mountains become very real again. On the other hand, if between deserts and the mountains, because depending on which direction you're going, you get different results. Like, imagine people from California trying to pass through Nevada. Like, Northern California would have to pass through northern Nevada, which is a very long stretch of very, very extremely dry, terrible desert. People from Southern California would have to pass through their own Mojave Desert up through Las Vegas, which itself would be a disaster, and then through, like, St. George, and then up into Cedar City, etc. But depending on what occurs, there's a lot of things that could stop them. In fact, the Virgin River could flood and take out the road that connects Las Vegas to Utah. It would be gone, and that would not be a way you could go. And you're done for. You'd have to go around. And if you're going around, it's through nothing but desert. And then I was thinking, jets and other things. People who are rich and whatever else would probably be able to come here. But once that's done, it's done. Right? So, that's what I was thinking. This will cause many hundreds of thousands of the honest in heart to gather there. The support for this, Brigham Young, an inland empire will be established in these valleys of the mountains, which will be a place of refuge for millions of people to gather to, when the great day of judgment of God comes upon the earth, and the righteous come here for safety. For other quotations pertinent to this topic, see chapter 4. We will have to rely on God for a lot of water. Next, not because they would be saints, but for the safety and because they would not take up the sword against their neighbor. Support for this, George Q. Cannon. I expect to see the day when the Latter-day Saints will be the people to maintain the constitutional government on this land. Men everywhere should know that that we believe in the constitutional principles, and that we expect that it will be our destiny to maintain them. That the prediction will be fulfilled that was made 44 years ago, the 7th of last March, wherein God said to Joseph Smith, Ye hear of wars in foreign lands, but behold, I say unto you, that they are nigh, even at your doors, and not many years hence ye shall hear of wars in your own lands. But the revelation goes on to say that the day will come among the wicked that every man that will not take his sword against his neighbor must needs flee to Zion for safety. A portion of that revelation has been fulfilled. The remainder will be the causes are in operation to bring it about. We are not alone in the thought of the Republic drifting steadily in that direction, that we are leaving the old constitutional landmarks, and that the time is not far distant when there will be trouble in consequence of it, when there will be civil broils, strife, and to escape them, we believe men will be compelled to flee to the Mormons, despite as they are now. So, again, it makes sense if we're the only place that really has peace because we're just upholding the principles of the Constitution. I mean, remember, back in just before World War I, they made the federal bank, and they haven't taken it back. They started doing income tax, which was supposed to be temporary. They haven't rescinded it. Those were some of the first tiny little steps that you're like, whatever, everyone does that now. And it's like, yeah, but that's not the way it used to be. And then you follow that up with especially policies of FDR It was staggering how close to socialism and I wouldn't say, well, not it was, pick your authoritarian centralized government. Socialism, communism, fascism, blah, 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 right? You could pick one of those. We were so close to it in so many regards. The only thing that prevented it was the fact that we still had a constitution, because the government was overstepping its bounds so badly under the guise of programs to make things fair and to help the poor people and get these government jobs. And so you had this blue eagle you could put on your storefront, and that meant you had to abide by all these laws that were egregious, and they just were meant to help employ people with useless labor. It was bad. It was really bad. But we got through it by the skin of our teeth, but a lot didn't get repealed, and it led the way for a lot of other crap. And now we're here. So anyways, let's keep going. You will be so numerous that you will be in danger of famine, but not for the want of seed time and of harvest, but because so many to be fed. Wilford Woodruff. Lay up your wheat and other provisions against the day of need, for the day will come when they will be wanted, and no mistake about it. We shall want bread, and the Gentiles will want bread. And if we are wise, we shall have something to feed them and ourselves when famine comes. Next is, many will come with bundles under their arms to escape the calamities, and there will be no escape except by fleeing to Zion. Heber C. Kimball. I am very thankful that so many of the brethren have come with handcarts. My soul rejoiced. My heart was filled and grew as big as two bushels a basket, a 2-bushel basket. 2 companies have come through safe and sound. Is this the end of it? No. There will be millions on millions that will come, much in the same way. Only they will not have handcarts. They will take their bundles under their arms and their children to their backs and under their arms and flee. The next, it says, those that come to you will try to keep the laws and be one with you, for they will see your unity and the greatness of your organization. Orson Pratt. The Gentiles will in that day come to us as a flowing stream, and we shall have to set our gates open continually. They will come as clouds and as doves in large flocks. Many of them will come that have never heard of the servants of God, but they will hear that peace and health dwell among us, that our officers are all peace officers, and our tax gatherers men of righteousness. It will be extremely important to be that honest and have people of honesty join us. I don't know. I worry about the caliber of people that we already have among us that that would be, because we've had riots here. That's what I mean. Think about the people who are already ideologically divided from among us and that would want to persecute us. Unless they are drawn out by some means, and that we can unite in unity of culture, of keeping laws, and that those who do not want to keep laws or are ideologically just opposed to us and want to persecute us can be ejected or self-deport, basically, that those people who want to actually work together as neighbors, I think we'll have to figure out a way to help everyone be employed in some good work to make something, get something, do something. I think a lot of that will have to do with agriculture. I think a lot of that will have to do with making things. I don't know. It will be very fascinating, because when you no longer have a global supply chain to work on, you'll need men of caliber to stand up and say, I can volunteer to help people make this or do this. That as people come, here's how you know you can do this. Think about just making paper. Imagine that we need to make paper. Unless we have contact with outside resources still to bring it in here, we'll have to be making it ourselves. Anyway, just to have a notebook for people to write on. And in the Utah desert, if we have millions of people, we will not have much when it comes to wood. We'll have to learn to build with Adobe. We'll have to learn to work together communally. Anyway, I don't know. There's all sorts of ways you can approach it, but all conjecture on my part. The Turkish Empire, or the Crescent, will be one of the first powers that will be disrupted. For freedom must be given for the God. Wait, what? The Turkish Empire, or the Crescent, will be one of the first powers that will be disrupted. For freedom must be given for the gospel to be preached in the Holy Land. In 1917, British forces under the direction of General Allenby conquered Palestine and wrested it from the grasp of the Turkish Empire, which had controlled it for 4 centuries. This opened the way for the return of the Jews to Palestine, greatly increased numbers. For further information on this topic, see Chapter 8. That's kind of interesting, because here we're talking about stuff that we think is future, and then we jump back to that. Next in the prophecy, the Lord took of the best blood of the nations and planted them in the small islands now called England and Great Britain, and give them great power in the nation for thousands of years, and their power will continue with them, and that they may keep the balance of power and keep Russia from usurping her power over all the world. Many members of the church who are of English descent have patriarchal blessings, indicating that they are of the house of Israel. England has, since the time of this prophecy, maintained a position of world power, in spite of the damage she has incurred during the 2 world wars. England today serves as a balance of power between the United States and Russia. I don't know how well that's maintained today. Even in the 1990s, yeah, we could still see that. I mean, but now? No. Like, really now. I think we'll see. I'll just leave it at that. England and France are now bitter enemies, but they will be allied together to be united to keep Russia from conquering the world. England and France are now united, both politically and economically, to oppose Russia's goal of world conquest. Well, how's that going? I mean, if I just sit there and look at the Russian-Ukraine war, and it's dragging on, and them being put through a meat grinder, it's like, why? What was the point? There's no real use. Like, a lot of the incursions the United States have been going on, this year, I sit there and go, whoa, wow, like, well, we got that done. And you can see that there's, like, a reason behind each. They're like, okay, so the reason for that is against terrorism and narcotics and corrupt governments, and they just get it done, get in, get out. And this whole Iran thing, it's kind of the same thing, but it had drug on for, decades upon decades. Well, now something's being done about it. A lot is being done about it, and it's, wow, okay. Whether you like it or not, stuff is happening, and everyone hopes that it just is let's get this done, let's hopefully get them some sort of semblance of freedom and be on our way. Next it says, the 2 popes, Greek and Catholic, will come together and be united. The Protestant religions do not know how much they are indebted to Henry VIII for throwing off the Pope's bull and establishing the Protestant faith. He was the only monarch who could do so at the time, and he did it because this nation, England, was at his back to sustain him. One of the peculiar features in England is the established red coat, a uniform making so remarkable a mark to shoot at, and yet they have conquered wherever they have gone. The reason for this will be known by them someday. The lion and the unicorn of Israel is their ensign, and the wisdom and the statesmanship of England have come from having so much of the blood of Israel in the nation. And it says, it should be noted that in the light of the current trend towards the merging of many of the churches, fulfillment of this prophecy would be in keeping with the spirit in the times. The present Roman Catholic Pope has stressed the idea of other churches merging with the Roman Church on several occasions. Frankly, just ideologically, what is it? Hayden Carroll? No, not Hayden Carroll. Thoughtful Faith. Oh God, his name escapes me for right now. But on Thoughtful Faith, he was talking about the Vatican II in the 60s, where they were changing their hardline stances that persecuted so many other churches. And so you can see a lot of Catholic churches and other things saying, yeah, we have our disagreements and we know we're right, but as long as it isn't those guys who are over in the mountains, we're good, right? We're Christians. While the terrible revolution, so the next in the prophecy, while the terrible revolution of which I have spoken has been going on, England will be neutral until it becomes so inhuman that she will interfere to stop the shedding of blood. No evidence has been found to substantiate this portion of the prophecy. England and France will unite together to make peace, not to subdue the nations. This is clearly the spirit which has been characterized the alliance between France and England during the 20th century. But look at what happened to the European Union, right? You have England going its own way with the Brexit, and France becoming much more socialist and devolving into riots. Unless there's a big shift back towards the way things were, I think these were ahead of their time, and I think they're now past their time comparatively. So unless there's some big swift changes in attitudes, let's see here. Hi, Lovey. They will find the nations so broken up and so many claiming government till there will be no responsible government. This condition is expected to exist in a worldwide scale later, during the period of universal conflict. The prophecy would definitely apply to this period if this portion was dealing with the United States in particular. Next it says, then it will appear to other nations or powers as though England has taken possession of the country. No evidence has been found to substantiate this portion of the prophecy. Now, here's my thing, is how? How? With what? Right? England itself, because of the policies that they have been so succumbed by terrible government themselves that there's hardly... They literally arrested a lady standing in front, far off, on the public sidewalk of an abortion clinic, who was there silently praying, silently in her mind. They arrest street preachers because they call it hate speech. So when I sit here and think of how corrupt that government has become, how wide open and suppressive of it has become of its own people, like England, Canada, and Australia, just absolute tragedies with how they treat their people. And I sit here and go, they're going to be these saviors that come in? I don't think so. Unless there's a stronger core to England than I suppose. I just does not seem right to me. And take over the United States? I mean, they'll probably stop the infighting and bloodshed, but how? With what? Them and what army? I don't, like, the United States has become so prolifically strong. I know England has a great army and navies. I know. But it just doesn't seem to compare. I mean, if everything has gone to pot so badly all over, and they, for some reason, don't join the fray, which I don't see how they wouldn't, okay. Well, let's keep going. Then it will appear the other nations' possession of England. The black horse will flee to the invaders and will join with them.
Bye.
Hey, love you, bye. For they will have fear of becoming slaves again. Knowing England did not believe in slavery, fleeing to them, they believe would make them safe. Armed with British bayonets, the doings of the black horse will be terrible. Here the prophet said he could not bear to look upon the scene as shown him in vision, and asked the Lord to close the scene. No evidence has been found to substantiate this portion of the prophecy. So, and this is where the book gets the idea that the black horse has to do with the black people. Again, at the same time, they join the invaders because they think they're going to be slaves again. Like, unless there is a large revival of really abhorrent attitude towards your neighbors in anywhere. I mean, look, there's the internet. That's one thing where every troll can be an absolute horror as they choose. But truly actually implementing crap like that? No. I just don't see it happening on large scale. One punk here or there, they'd be squished real quick if they were trying to do something in real life, because nobody thinks that's a good idea anymore. I mean, unless you have something where, because of mobocracy, it is revived because, again, the reason that was always a default state of humanity of having slaves was mainly because what do you do with prisoners? What do you do with those who are conquered? Which is better, to actually have them be used for usefulness, or is it better to just take them out? It's a horrible thing, but that's what people in the past had to deal with. So, figure it out. So, prophecy continuing, he said, during this time, the great white horse will have gathered strength, sending out elders to gather the honest in heart among the pale horse, or the people of the United States, to stand by the Constitution of the United States as it was given by the inspiration of God, said Orson Pratt. The hand of the Lord will be over us to sustain us, and we will spread forth. He will multiply us in the land. He will make us great people and strengthen our borders, and send forth the missionaries of this people to the... You goober. Jeez. They knocked something down. And they're still knocking it down. Oh, good. So thankfully, it wasn't too bad. Sorry. That may stand forth, let's see here, proclaim there's a place left in the heart of American continent. From there, the peace and safety and refuge from the storms, desolations, tribulations from among the wicked. Next in the prophecy. In these days, God will set up a kingdom never to be thrown down, for other kingdoms to come unto. The Almighty has established this kingdom with orders and laws and everything pertaining thereto, that we might understand his will and operate in his kingdom, that we might be taught of God to understand the correct principles, that when the nations shall be convulsed, we may stand forth as saviors and do that which will be best calculated to produce the well-being of the human family, and finally redeem the ruined world, not only in a religious but in a political point of view. Sorry, my nose really itches. And these kingdoms that will not let the gospel be preached will be humbled until they will. And Orson Pratt said about that, "And the present time there are some nations who will not permit any religion to be proclaimed within their borders except that which is established by law, when God shall cast down thrones, which he will soon do, when he will overturn kingdoms and empires, which time is very near at hand. Then other governments will be formed more favorable to religious liberty, and the missionaries of this church will visit those nations. And so we might enumerate what God is doing among these despotic powers, overturning and changing long-established usages and institutions, that his servants may go by his own command to deliver the great and last message of the gospel to the inhabitants of the earth preparatory to the coming of his Son. Whew. Let's see here. Yeah, I can push through. England, Germany, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Switzerland, Holland, and Belgium have a considerable amount of blood of Israel among their people, which must be gathered. These nations will submit to the kingdom of God. England will be the last of these three kingdoms to surrender. But when she does, she will do it as a whole, in comparison as she threw off the Catholic power. The nobility know that the gospel is true, but it is not enough pomp and grandeur in influence for them to embrace it. They are proud and will not acknowledge the kingdom of God or come unto it until they see the power which it will have, said Orson Pratt. The law of the government of all nations will go forth from Zion, and the laws of the government of the United States will now go forth from Washington. Zion will be the seat of the government, and her officers will be far more respected and have far more influence than those of any government on earth. All nations will yield perfect obedience to their command and counsels. Next in the prophecy, peace and safety in the Rocky Mountains will be protected by a cordon band of the white horse and the red horse. To support that, only the idea of the church being separated from the rest of the United States can be substantiated. Said Heber C. Kimball, for instance, lay up your stores, take up your skills and fine things, and exchange them for grain, and such things as you need, as for the time will come when we will be obliged to depend upon our own resources. For the time is not far distant when the curtain will be dropped between us and the United States. When that time comes, brethren and sisters, you will wish you had commenced sooner to make your own clothing. I tell you, God requires us to go into home manufacture and prolong it as much as you like. You have got to do it. Next, it says, the coming of the Messiah among this people will be so natural that only those who see him will know that he has come. But he will come and give his laws unto Zion, and minister unto his people. This will not be his coming in the clouds of heaven to take vengeance upon the wicked of the world. The temple in Jackson County will be built in this generation. Oh, sorry, that was the next part. So let's see how these are supported. Charles Penrose said, among the first mentions of these three classes of men, the Lord will make up his appearance first, and the appearance will be unknown to the rest of mankind. He will come to the temple, prepared for him, and his faithful people will behold his glory and hear his voice and gaze upon his glory. From his own lips they will receive further instructions for the development and beautifying of Zion, and for the extension and sure stability of his kingdom. And then when we talked about the temple in Jackson County, the support for that. This is a restatement of Doctrine and Covenants 84, 5-4. Verily, it is the word of the Lord that the city New Jerusalem shall be built by the gathering of the saints, beginning at this place, even the place of the temple, which temple will be reared in this generation. For verily, this generation shall not pass away until an house shall be built unto the Lord, and a cloud shall rest upon it, which cloud shall be even the glory of the Lord, which shall fill the house. Concerning this passage, Orson Pratt said, as regards the number of years by which a generation shall be measured, we have no specific definite period given to us by revelation. The Lord speaks in terms that are general in relation to generations, and I agree. There's other scriptural evidences of that I can recall, not specifically, but so could I be wrong? Probably, but what I'm talking about is he says a house will be reared in this generation. What he means by that is like this dispensation or within a general time frame. And among the Nephites immediately after Christ's appearance to them, a generation was 100 years. In the fourth generation, they were destroyed as a nation, except some few who went over to the Lamanites. We find generations numbering from father to son to grandson, etc., and we come to the average generations. According to the statistics of nations, we find them to be about 30 years to a generation. But when the Lord speaks in general terms and says, this generation shall not pass away until a house shall be built in his name, as is given in this book of covenants, and a cloud should rest upon it, in that case, I do not think he is limited to any definite period, but suffice it to say that the people living in 1832, when the revelation was given, will not all pass away. There will be some living when the house spoken of will be reared, on which the glory of God will rest. Already 45 years have passed away since the revelation was given concerning the building of that house. So, and there has been a lot of stuff that's gone on in Jackson, Missouri, but entirely? So, 41. They have these bulleted pointed. This is the next section of prophecy. The saints will think there will not be time to build it, but with all the help you will receive, you can put up a great temple quickly. They will have all the gold and silver and precious stones, for these things only will be used for beautifying the temple. The proclamation issued by the Quorum of the 12 called upon the kings of the earth to supply their wealth to help build the kingdom. And now, O ye kings, rulers of the peoples and the Gentiles, hear that the word of the Lord of this commandment is for you. You are not only required to repent and obey the gospel in its fullness, and thus become members or citizens of the kingdom of God, but you are also hereby commanded in the name of the Lord, in the name of Jesus Christ, to put your silver and your gold, your ships and your steam vessels, your railroad trains, your horses, chariots, camels, mules, lighters, into active use for the fulfillment of these purposes. For be it known unto you that the only salvation which remains for the Gentiles is for them to be identified in the same covenant and to worship at the same altar with Israel. In short, they must come to the same standard, for there shall be one Lord, and his name one, and he shall be king over all the earth. I didn't know when that proclamation was made. It was a proclamation of the 12 apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Millennial Star, October 22nd, 1845. So, cool. I didn't know they had that. Next section, it says, all the skilled mechanics you want, and the 10 tribes of Israel will help you build it. Chapter 6 explains that 3 groups will participate in the building of New Jerusalem, while no other prophecy is known, which says that the 10 tribes will help build the temple. It is known that the Gentiles who will be gathered to the New Jerusalem after the coming of the 10 tribes will still have to help construct the city. It's logical that the 10 tribes would also have to participate in the construction work, since they will come before the majority of the Gentiles. We'll see. When you see this land bound with iron, you may look toward Jackson County. Brigham Young. By and by there will be a gulf between the righteous and the wicked, so that they cannot trade with each other, and the national intercourse will cease. As chapters 4 and 6 indicate, the sighting of the cutting off of the mountains from the rest of the country will immediately precede the return of the saints to Jackson County. Next part of the prophecy. At this point, he made a pause, and looking up, as though the vision was still in view, he said, there is a land beyond the Rocky Mountains that will be invaded by the heathen Chinese unless great care and protection are given. Speaking of the heathen nations, he said, where there is no law, there is no condemnation, and this will apply to them. Ezra Taft Benson said, there is little doubt that the leaders of the Red China view war as inevitable, and wait only the propitious moment in which to strike. For other quotations pertinent to this topic, see Chapter 1. Power will be given to the white horse to rebuke the nations far off, and they will be the one with the white horse, but when the law goes forth, they will obey, for the law will go forth from Zion. Supporting Brigham Young. We have a nation here in the mountains that will be a kingdom by and by, and be governed by pure laws and principles. What do you call yourselves? Some may ask. Here are the people that constitute the kingdom of God. It may be some time before that kingdom is fully developed, but the time will come when the kingdom of God will reign free and independent. There will be a kingdom on the earth that will be controlled upon the same basis, in part, as that of the government of the United States, and it will govern and protect in their rights the various classes of men, irrespective of their different modes of worship. For the law must go forth from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, and the Lord Jesus will govern every nation and kingdom upon the earth. This is interesting, because the actual true principles of the government when it was first founded, I absolutely love. What it's become through corruption of both businesses and government, and that all comes from the people as well, is saddening. Yet our government is absolutely the worst, besides all the others. So I always have to keep that in mind. I mean, it could always be worse. Just think, if you went anywhere else, you go to Canada, go to England, go to Australia. They came from the same back history as us. They do not have the same principles. And so there is a lot to be said for what we still have, even though I can see all sorts of degeneration and corruption. Is it bad compared to other places? Yeah, there's things that are bad, but is it as bad as other places? Yeah. So there you go. If we're able to do away with all that because we understand the importance of needing to be righteous to govern properly, I think that would help a whole lot. I think if we basically did a reset and said, look, we're going to have to establish our own government here and have it be serious here. Let's do away with all these, stupid, tiny laws until we take care of it. Not bureaucracies of the government, but the actual governing bodies. That way we know what they are and we have to pass them and take care of them. Or, in addition to that, there's just, it's weird because there's a lot of precedents and other things that are good. And there's a lot of precedents and other things that are bad. So how do you decide? If we could just, I don't know. Again, it's a tangent that I have no clue how you could get something to be that strong that everyone can get behind. So, the last great struggle Zion will have to contend with will be when the whole of the Americas will be made the Zion of our God, said Brigham Young. You may build up Zion and learn to be men and not children. It was a perfect sweepstakes when the prophet called North and South America Zion. Let us go to and build the temple with all our might, that we may build up the kingdom when established, and her cords lengthened. Next part. Those opposing will be called Gog and Magog, some of the world led by the Russian Tsar, and their great power will be great, but all opposition will be overcome, and then this land will be Zion, the Zion of our God. There is nothing which supports this portion of the prophecy, and it of all parts analyzed is most likely to be an error, since it is a conflicting statement both doctrinally and chronologically. It is not known whether the parenthetic statement was made by the prophet or whether it was inserted by the recorders or later interpreters. So, again, this is an interesting prophecy because it was written down many years after it was supposedly given. It was a recollection of things that Joseph Smith said apparently at that time. There are contradictions about specifics, which, it's not terrible. You don't remember what you ate 3 years ago. How in the world are you supposed to remember the specific weather on a day 3 years ago? You can understand you can take to heart the principles that were shared, but have the specifics be wrong. And so there's parts where it says, hey, we have nothing for this. I think a lot of this is colored by the history. I don't know when they wrote this down. I'm sure it's in here, but it seems like the first part, which is kind of going through the history of the saints, moving to Utah, having it be a place of refuge, colors their perception of the things that they may have heard and brought up in this prophecy. I think there's a lot of it in this book that is, I'm wondering if the White Horse prophecy was something that he was trying to establish a chronology for. And thus came out this book with all the other prophecies. And it just happens to kind of follow along with this. I think there's a lot about it that makes sense. But I think there's a lot of hypotheticals that we are either already kind of seeing come true, but not to the extent that it's saying. Because there's a lot of interconnectedness that is here that it doesn't show. Like, for example, the idea of England being a safe place for your money. It definitely was for the longest time. Do I view that way now? No, I don't think. I maybe in the financial world it's still kind of that way, but I don't see it. Maybe I'm just not in as part of it. And then the other thing is France and England working together to help stop the bloodshed among the warring tribes of every nation. It's like, sure, you and what army? How unified is England itself? They're one of the people who are most oppressed under their current government, as well as, England, Australia, in the English speaking world. So England, Australia, Canada, those are the big three refuges of the English speaking world that I can think of. And all of them are because of them regulating hate speech. It's become ridiculous when they refuse to prosecute people who are committing such atrocities that little girls trying to defend themselves with knives are hailed as heroes. That's really rough. So there's parts of this that I'm like, how much was colored by their time and place, right? England and France were quite powerful still at the time. And the idea of them working together didn't make sense at that time, but we've seen them. And so I could sit here and go back and make excuses and say, no, see, they really did help, especially during World War II and the Cold War, and that's all true if we looked at it in that time frame. But again, does this mean that this prophecy is jumping around in time frames? Okay, if that's the case, then there's a good case to say that almost all of this has been fulfilled. Because you could say that, yes, England and France, and they suffered a bunch in the hands of not only during World War I, World War II, and then the Cold War. And absolutely, they were at the front lines. But now we're in a position where it's like, there are statements that don't make sense to me, like that England would come in and try and help out. When I'm like, they would probably be one of the first places to fall because of how divided it is, because of allowing subgroups to come in that don't assimilate to that's the problem that I see with all of these prophecies, is if you let unfettered migration occur, but yet have no one have the same culture and values, you will fight ideologically and you will fight for survival. And it'll come down to your tribe if everything goes to pot. The way you people stay safe is sharing resources among people that you feel safe with. And if you do not have higher principles, such as gospel principles, such as, the Constitution or belief in the Constitution, then you devolve into tribalism, like base tribalism of, what do you trust more? Do you trust the people who say that they believe like you believe or look like you? Or it depends. How basic do you want to go? Or that you trust nobody other than those in your family? Or because you don't trust those in your family because of their ideology, you don't even trust them. So it all depends on how far a people devolve from their standards. If you have us staying together as a people in standard, the great danger, and I still warn about this, is those within. When I sit here and think of this place becoming a refuge for millions and millions of people when we're already stressed for resources because we don't have enough housing already, why? It becomes kind of ridiculous. And what about water and factories and jobs and things like that? It's like, unless there's a big change, unless there are many people who step up and say, I'm a farmer who works out here, I need this many people to help work my land because we're running out of gasoline, but I could do it with 300 people. It's going to be hard labor at times, and then it's going to be easy labor at other times, but I need this many people, and we can start making food. Okay, farmers being able to, because there's a lot of things that don't make sense to me, like, how do you feed these millions of people that are here without us being able to go out and trade with others? We really have to turn a lot of land to be agricultural. And a lot of our valley stuff has already been taken up. So we'd have to cultivate all these other lands that, do we have the water going through there enough? How far will this inland empire be? Because there's different places where it's possible that we could actually grow a whole bunch of food. The question is it going to be good enough? Is it going to be nutrient dense enough? If it goes up into Idaho, then we've got a lot more help. If we think only in terms of Utah, I don't know, it doesn't seem to make sense. But if you go up to Idaho, there's a lot of agriculture up there. And if we go down to Arizona, I don't know. I don't know how Arizona would help. I don't know what's down there that could help. So, in the end, there's a bunch about this prophecy that makes total sense. That I'd say, yep, this has happened, that has happened according to this. If we look backwards, if we look at what's happening now, if we look at China wanting to come over and fight us, yeah, I can see all that. I can see us devolving into mobocracies. I can see that. The absolute total devastation and destruction, I don't see that yet. I could see that happening, but I don't see that happening yet. But the thing that does not make sense to me is the becoming this kind of inland empire and having the resources to be independent. That may have been the case when we had less people. That may have been the case when most people learned to be strong and independent on their own. Nowadays, we're all interconnected so much. That's the thing that doesn't make sense in light of this. So let's read the summary, and I'll be done here. Observations concerning the prophecy. The reader will note, after examining the prophecy and the evidence given to substantiate it, that the historical events of the prophecy records pertaining to the manner in which it was given are generally in harmony with the history recorded by the prophet. Every portion of the prophecy pertaining to the past era of the saints' exodus west, territorial problems, the fall of the Turkish Empire, etc., have literally been fulfilled. In general, the prophecy confirms to the pattern of the future, which established by the entire series of prophecies quoted in this work. Almost all the prophecy which is pertaining to the future has been sustained by similar prophecies and teachings by general authorities. There are, however, several areas of conflict. The most serious of these is Rushton's report on the weather conditions. This conflict would seem to indicate that he waited a considerable time before recording the prophecy that would raise question as to the overall accuracy of his recording. Like I said, are you going to remember what you ate? Are you going to remember the weather from 10 years ago? 15 years ago? No. But you'll remember the sentiments and especially what was most important to you in the narrative. People are much better at recalling things when it has to do with specific positions during times of stress. So like remembering who sat at a table when you visualize it, or the sentiments of what was being told in a story-wise. If you narratively adhere to something, if something grabs you emotionally or grabs you intellectually in a story, you absorb the story more than the specifics. So the overall accuracy, yeah, the details can be off. But if the sentiment is about right, then okay, we can say generally, all right, we're on the right track. Portions of the prophecy pertaining to foreign nations and their relationships with the church during the period of internal conflict in the United States are generally unsubstantiated. This is the area which refers to the horses. If there was error in recording the prophecy, this would be the most likely area in which errors occur. This is the portion which has occasioned criticism of the prophecy. Yeah, like me talking about England, France, really? I mean, if you think about them during the Cold War and the World Wars, sure. But during the time of trouble and strife? Really? We'll see. In the prophecy, if the prophecy is fictitious and not inspired, then it is extremely remarkable in that its conformity to the pattern of the prophecy found in scriptures and statements by the general authorities. Whoever wrote it, and it would apparently be Edwin Rushton, would have had a familiarity with prophecies far superior to that of the average Latter-day Saint. While it is impossible to say with certainty that the prophecy is valid and that it was made by Joseph Smith, the overwhelming weight of the evidence at hand causes the author to be of that opinion. Consequently, portions of the prophecy have been used in this work in the areas where they form a part of an established pattern. Until positive proof can be obtained, however, the author feels that the white horse prophecy should be used with care and discretion. And frankly, okay, there's one last thing about, we'll do that next time, which is notes on Jackson County and the city of Zion. And I think that's actually a good point for all the prophecy in this book, is that there's a lot that has come true, there's a lot that seem that it will come true, but there are parts that I'm just like, I don't see how, right? Like, for example, prophecies that did come true, specifically and directly, Joseph Smith's prophecy of the Civil War, right? He called it, and he called where it would start and how it happened. Now, of course, you can be all cynical if you want and try and dismiss it in different ways, but he really did call it. And the idea that he did so a good long time before it occurred. 20 years, 30 years, something like that. To the point where it didn't seem like it was, at the time it was given, it was just kind of like, okay, whatever. But then it became extremely apparent later on. And that's the kind of thing that I tend to see when it comes to prophecies, is that at the time they're given, most people are just like, yeah, okay, whatever. And later on it's like, wait a minute, we are getting there. And that's why I see when I look at this, I'm like, wait a minute, there's a lot in here that it's like, how is this not fulfilled? And then there's other parts where I'm like, how in the world is that going to work out? And it could be a mix of that. There could be portions where it's like, well, yeah, it was fulfilled. There are other portions where it's like, maybe it just won't be fulfilled at all. And that's okay. You have to understand, as Latter-day Saints, there is an unjust standard that is attempted to apply to us all the time. That if someone gives prophecy and it doesn't come true, then they were never a prophet, and you should throw it all away, and you're wrong, and they're nothing but frauds. The problem is that's not true. Look at Jonah, look at Elisha. Elisha gave a prophecy that Israel would win in a battle, and it looked like they were winning, but then it didn't turn out that way. Does that mean Elisha is a fraud? Does that mean you should throw out the Bible? I mean, come on. The idea is that the Lord gives us prophecies, and a lot of times we will fulfill them. A lot of times we will get them all. There are conditional prophecies where, like Jonah, he goes through and he says, this city will be destroyed. Period. Now, we sit there and think of it as a conditional prophecy because we know later that the Lord said, oh, hey, they repented. Nah, we're not going to destroy them. So we consider that a conditional prophecy because we've seen the result. But if you read the text about Jonah, he walks through and he says, you're all going to die. Period. Goodbye. See you later. But when the Lord finally doesn't do that, Jonah's pissed off, right? Because what was the point of him going there to do that prophecy? It was to help them repent. But he's angry because it didn't get fulfilled. So he looks like a jerk. But they repented. And so God was willing to sit there and say, okay, fine. We'll leave him be. So same thing here. I think there's a lot of prophecy that absolutely can be fulfilled as it was stated and as it was expected. But it doesn't mean that everything has to be fulfilled. It could be something that was given to because it was colored by the what was happening at that time. It could be colored by things that could have occurred but didn't. So it's important to make those distinctions and understand that there's flexibility in that. The most important thing is getting revelation for your own personal life. And the biggest things that you can do is start with yourself. Make yourself better, then make your family better. Then after you've made your family better, make your community better. And if you can, beyond that, make a wider community and wider better. And so keep that in mind. We'll do that last little bit on Jackson County, and that'll wrap this up. May the Spirit of God be with you, so that he can guide you in your life. We'll see you.